Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I truly hope that everyone has had like a good start to the year, and whatever goals you have set for yourself for 2025, you're on the road to achieving them. Since we are moving steadily along into the year, I wanted to just give a little bit of a little mini recap about the stuff that I've read this year. I posted a video at the end of last year discussing the 25 books that I do want to read in 2025, and aside from the 25 books that I do want to read in 2025, my own personal Goodreads challenge is to read at least 35 books this year. For January and February, I have so far read 8 books this year, and for the first time in like the longest time ever, Goodreads is telling me that I'm like 2 books ahead of schedule for accomplishing my goal. Isn't that exciting? Guys, that's really exciting for me. One thing that I will say is helping me accomplish it is that I created myself like a reading journal this year. And so yeah, I was influenced, okay? I definitely watched a couple of videos of people who made reading journal flick throughs of like each year that they've done. And you know, this is mine, okay? And so because I want to use this notebook and make sure that it's not just, you know, another notebook that ends up in the notebook graveyard, I have made sure that I've like written and taken notes about each book that I've read so that I can discuss them with you. Isn't that exciting? Without any further ado, let's just get into the books that I have read so far this year. I'm going to consult the notebook here. Look at my little January wrap-up page. The first book that I read was The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monika Kim. I wrote myself a little synopsis. A Korean-American girl, college student, starts going crazy when her mum brings home her white boyfriend after their dad walked out. Ooh, what an interesting synopsis. I feel like that synopsis doesn't really do the story justice. It is, you know, a Korean American college girl who does, you know, start kind of losing her mind. I liked this story a lot. Like, although I'm not Korean, I do kind of relate to it. I myself am like Filipino, and you know, there are definitely times when my mum has like cooked some form of fish, whether it's like sinigang or something like that with salmon heads, and she'll be like, the eyes are literally the best part, and she'll offer them, and me, I'm like squeamish. I don't want to eat the fish eyeballs. One of those things that she discusses in the book of her mum like wanting to offer that food, and I think it is a beautiful book that talks about the culture. And no, it doesn't. It doesn't really talk about the culture, but it makes me reflect on the culture of how, you know, love, family tradition is spread through the traditions of communal eating and, you know, sharing food and everything like that. This girl talks about her mother who very obviously wants to show her love to her family through cooking elaborate meals, and she tries to cook like their dad's favorite dish in order to help, or in hopes, I guess, of their dad coming back after he walks out on them. Obviously, her mum puts all this effort in order to bring back their dad, and the food ends up going to waste because it's not enough to entice him back. I liked the premise because I do like a story of like a crazy girl, a girl who's gone crazy. I liked the ambiguity of the story where you're not sure if she has committed these violent acts, you're not sure if she has actually killed people, you're not sure if she has actually eaten someone's eyeball. Did also really like the chapters that were about the main character's mother. You know, you see into her childhood and you just kind of sympathize with her. It's just kind of so sad. Now, this book itself, I did only give it like a 3-star rating because I didn't like the ending. I felt like the ending was very much like, oh, it was all a dream. And I know that I just said that I like the ambiguity of it, but I feel like without giving too much away of the spoilers, there's just something, there's a part in the ending, if you have read it, where it's like, okay, like I get it from a story standpoint that you want to wrap it up in a certain way and be like, this is the reason. But it just cheapened the story in my opinion. So I did only give it a 3-star rating. But either way, I do still recommend it. I think that if you like crazy girl stories and like a little bit of horror, a little bit of gore, I think it's a fun story to read. The next book that I read was Are You Awake by Claire McGowan. This is an author that I have definitely read before. She does like thriller type novels, like real schlocky, real stupid thriller type novels. This story is basically like a girl in London goes missing, and we follow these 2 characters who think that they witness this girl getting through like the window of a building across the way late at night. And so one of these witnesses is a mum who's up with her 2 kids during this heat wave. Her kids can't get to sleep. She can't get to sleep because of them. The other person who witnesses it is a man who used to be a journalist. Some event happened over in Syria and now he's like racked with guilt. And so he can't sleep because of that guilt that he feels. And he also thinks that he saw this girl getting attacked in the window. I did only rate this book like a 2-star because I felt like the story itself was too unbelievable. I know that it's like a thriller, a domestic little thriller. Like, obviously, not everything's going to be believable, but at the same time, like, I feel like, I don't know, it just wasn't believable. I felt like it was too wrapped up in a bow at the end of it. And then the last book that I read in January, which definitely put me into like a reading slump for January, was I read Wicked by, I say his name wrong every time, Gregory Maguire. I think I've said everything that I need to say about Wicked in my previous video about Wicked itself. You can watch it if you want my full thoughts on it, but I didn't like it. I think the problem with it was that I was going into reading the book from the viewpoint of, I like the movie musical that is based on the Broadway musical that is based on the book Wicked. Rather than seeing the book Wicked as its own standalone thing, I was still making those comparisons to the musical side of the franchise. I think that if one day I could erase parts of my memory so that I'm able to forget about the existence of the movie musical and the Broadway musical itself and just go into Wicked as its own standalone thing, maybe I would like it more. It was one of the books that I wanted to read as part of like my 25 for 25. It was also a book that I was reading with my friends as part of a book club for that month. So that was the only reason why I finished it. Otherwise, it would have definitely have been like a DNF for me. But that was it for January. Moving on to February. According to this spread, I read 5 books. Despite February being the shortest month of the year, I did end up reading more books in it than I had in January. And I'm going to attribute that to how much I hated Wicked and how much it put me in a bit of a reading slump that I didn't want to read anything else. I didn't want to get through it. So it just really slowed me down. Either way, these were the books that I read in February. Like I said, because February is obviously the month of Valentine's, I had this idea in my head that like I wanted to read more romancy type books. And as it turns out, what I have learned this month is that I don't like romance books. Oh, sue me. The first book that I read in February was Experienced by Kate Young. I think this is a debut novel by Kate Young. So I don't know. I feel bad about what I'm about to say. Basically, in Experience, we meet a woman named Bet, short for Elisabetta. She is in her late 20s and she came out as a lesbian in her late 20s. And so the first woman that she ends up dating, she falls head over heels with. And so she is about to tell this woman, like, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to marry you. I love you so much. You're the first woman that I've been with, and I think you're the best. I don't think it could ever get any better than this. And the woman that she's dating is like, oh, let me stop you right there. Actually, do you actually have those feelings for me, or do you only have those feelings for me because I am the first woman that you have been with? So the woman gives her like this ultimatum, being like, I want you to play the whole playing field for the next 3 months. We're going to take a break for 3 months. I want you to date as many people that you can, casually, have some fun, and then come back to me at the end of 3 months on whether or not, I am what you actually want. That's like the basic premise of it. And so we go through however many days leading up to like that 3 month break. I didn't like this story at all. I found that the main character was annoying and insufferable because she would go on dates with women. There's like one character in particular where she's like, oh, this is Ruth. Oh no, she doesn't want to date casually, but she's happy to be my little friend throughout my little journey, through my little break ultimatum journey or whatever. And she starts like, she goes on like a date kind of thing with Ruth, or like hangs out with her. And Ruth is very clearly like, hey, I don't want to talk to you about your ex. And she's like, oh, why don't you want to talk to me about my ex? What the hell? I thought we were friends. And I was like, are you so fucking dense? She doesn't want to talk to you about your ex because she clearly fucking likes you. Like, so dense. The character is so fucking dense. And like, if this is supposed to be a character who is a, you know, semi-autobiographical self-insert of the author, girl, Kate Young, I am so sorry, but she's so annoying. May, the woman who says like we should have this ultimatum, she's annoying as well. Ruth, annoying. Oh, reading this book made me realize that I don't like romance, because I don't like it when romance is the only aspect of the story. I don't like it. I don't think it's interesting to me. I think it ends up being quite boring. I rated it a 3-star anyway, because I'm like, I gotta support lesbians, I guess. But the book itself also ends in like an epilogue, and I also realized that I fucking hate epilogues. There's another book that I read this month that I think I will discuss my hate for epilogues, but in Experienced, I don't need to know what happens in a couple months' time with these characters, okay? I'm happy with how the story ended with those characters at that point in time. I can close that book, I can close it out, I can mark it as finished, and I feel satisfied enough in the story itself to know that it ended. I don't need an epilogue to show me what happens in a month from now. Who is that serving? Who? And it's also like, I don't like epilogues, and I also feel like FOMO, like a little bit of FOMO if I want to think about skipping an epilogue, because like, what if there was something really important in that epilogue, but there never is anything important in the epilogue. So I think people should stop putting them in. That's my humble onion. The next book that I read was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I thought that this was an entertaining enough read. This is a story about a woman from England who's going to go visit her brother over in Paris in this fancy apartment building that he lives in. But like, when she gets there, oh my god, her brother's missing. And when she goes into his apartment, there's blood everywhere and she can't find her brother. The story itself was like entertaining, and it was like enough of a page turner that I was like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, and then what? I was obviously like entertained by the story itself that I was able to finish it. I felt like some parts of the story as well were predictable enough that I was able to predict them. And I don't say predictable as a bad thing. I feel like if something is unpredictable, it's not a good thing. If you're able to sort of read a story and deduce this and this and this, I think that is better than reading the story, deducing those 3 things, but then the story telling you, actually, those 3 things, that was actually a misdirection, and these 3 things are actually what happened. Because then it's annoying. It's like the author didn't give us the power or the option, really, to be able to deduce that ourselves. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Does anyone understand what I mean? For some reason, I wrote down that in this book I disliked the incest vibes, but I don't even remember the incest parts. So, the next book that I read was Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. He's back. Voldemort's back. Taylor Jenkins Reid is obviously like a very famous, well-known author. Carrie Soto is Back is a story about a world class tennis champion woman who's like in her mid to late 30s. She has like a world record in like the most grand slams or something like that. And then there's a newcomer to the scene who's like a couple of years younger than her. Newcomer is about to break her world record. And so Carrie Soto is like, fuck you. I want to maintain my world record. I'm going to train to hit a whole bunch of grand slams in the next year so that I can maintain my record. I think I liked the book. I liked the book because it was entertaining and it was written in a way that was able to make me intrigued or interested in tennis. When I don't have an athletic bone in my body, I don't give a shit about the tennis. People tell me like, oh, I'm going down to Melbourne to see the Australian Open, and I look at them like, you give a fuck about tennis? When other people say that they're a fan of tennis, I feel like it's a slight against me. Because what do you mean that you like a boring game where you're supposed to sit there in silence while 2 people hit a ball across the court? When people tell me that they like tennis or that they're going to go see tennis or that they're going to play tennis, I think I can't be friends with you anymore. It's momentary. It is a momentary moment of being like, I can't be your friend anymore because since when the did you like tennis? Tennis is so boring. And because that is my perception of tennis being boring and I hate it, and it seems just like a stuffy sport when I think about Wimbledon, and you know, the prestige of a tennis court. Rich people have tennis courts and everything like that. For this book to make me intrigued about tennis, I think that that was pretty interesting writing. I thought it itself was interesting, the way that she wrote about tennis. I feel like it was very hard to relate to Carrie Soto as a character because she is such a highly motivated and driven character. And for me personally, I just don't have that same kind of drive. I don't got that dog in me. Okay, so for me to read about this woman who is the best and the top at her field and is doing everything that she can do in order to maintain being the best and the top, and how not being the best is like so hard on her self-esteem. Reading about that is so unrelatable because I am not the best at anything that I do. I'm happy. I'm fine. If I came second in the world, I think that that would still be good enough, whereas Carrie Soto doesn't. I gave that one like a 4 star, but you know, thinking about it now, I think I might drop it down to a 3. I don't know. I still liked it. I still liked it. It was entertaining. The next book that I read was a part of my 25 for 25, and it was also my February book club book with my friends. That was The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. The Ministry of Time is set in London in a not too distant future, kind of semi-present future kind of thing. And she ends up taking like this internal governmental transfer to this really secretive little department. That department itself is the Ministry of Time. The Ministry of Time, as it turns out, is dabbling in like time travel. And so they're taking a handful of people from parts of history and bringing them to the present time. And so our main character is assigned as what's called a bridge with one of these people. And so what the bridge does is basically live with one of these people who've been brought back from time. They call them expats. They live with them for a year in order to help them acclimatize to modern time. It's like a little bit sci-fi, a little bit mystery, a little bit romance. Okay, this is a book that does contain romance, but the romance itself is not central main focus of the story itself. Like the main focus is the sci-fi thriller, the sci-fi mystery of it all. There just so happens to be a romance that goes alongside it. The romance itself doesn't start until like 3/4 of the way into the book. It made me like kick my little feet, okay? Because there was pining throughout the rest of the book, but there was also mystery throughout the rest of the book as well. So I was happy with that. I was satisfied by the mystery aspect, and then they started kissing, and I was like, I thought it was really interesting. I would love it maybe if there was a sequel, but at the same time, if it was a standalone story, I'm fine with that as well. You know, I felt like the book itself said what it needed to say. As much as I would love to see more of the characters, it is what it is. I did give it a 4 star because I wasn't sure if I was like dick riding the book too hard. Another thing as well is that I felt like some of the character descriptions felt as if they were kind of glossed over, especially for the not so much the people from the past, like the expats. We did get decent description of the expats, but I felt like the other bridges and then also other people who worked in the Ministry of Time, I don't know, you get like some physical description of them, and then further down in the book, they're like, and also this character is black. And I'm like, did they mention that at the beginning that this character was like, I don't care that she's black, but like, I don't remember you mentioning that she was black. Like, I'm speaking specifically about Semelia when she is talking to her about like race and stuff like that. Yeah, I felt like the character descriptions could have been like a little bit better. You know, if race is going to be one of those things that is integral to how a character is going to navigate the story, especially navigate the internal politics of working for a government department. You know, how their race is going to impact what they say to people within that government department. I think that it should have been a little bit more focused on in the character descriptions. But either way, I really enjoyed this book and I would recommend it. If someone just wants something fun, like, go for it. And then last but not least, the last book that I read in February was Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna. I definitely got a copy of this book because of Jack Edwards' constant or seemingly constant recommendation of the book itself. The book itself, you follow like this interconnected web of people living in London, and you see their lives on the hottest weekend of 2019, when there just so happens to be a whale that's been stuck up the Thames, and you're going in between different windows into people's lives on this weekend. You have Maggie and Ed, who are a couple. Maggie is pregnant. Ed is gay. Maggie's best friend, Phil. Phil is gay. Phil's brother, Callum, is Ed's best friend. Callum is getting married to Holly. Holly doesn't really like Maggie, but she's invited her to the hens do, and on the hens do, they are able to see the whale that's stuck in the Thames. Callum and Phil's mum, Rosaline, has cancer. Rosaline has told Callum. Callum has told Ed. Ed has told Maggie. Rosaline hasn't told Phil that she has cancer. Phil is her other son. She's only told one son that she has cancer. Rosaline is married to Steve. Phil is seeing Keith. Keith is in an open relationship with Lewis. Lewis Lewis is in love with Keith. Lewis kind of feels jealous of Phil. Phil likes Keith, but is seemingly happy to be on like the outside of the throuple. There are a couple more characters than just those that I've mentioned. Those are the main ones that we do kind of care about. We do momentarily meet up, like see a glimpse into like two other characters' lives, and I was like, okay, I don't give a about them. When I was looking at the book on like Goodreads and Storygraph, it did have like one of the tags as it being like a psychological fiction. You are looking at the story itself, and you're able to see directly into each character's mind, and you understand where they're coming from. So there would be points where like two characters are having a conversation, and it feels like a whole page of inner dialogue, of inner thoughts is happening between two characters talking to each other. And so like it felt a little bit annoying. It felt like a little bit of a stretch of the time of some person being like, oh, how are you today? And then internally this person is just drifting off into the distance, thinking about how they were the last time that someone asked them how they were back here in Hackney. And so it's like, is the other character just standing there in silence while you're having this big old thought, this big old memory, thinking back on the past? Okay, like that kind of thing kind of pissed me off. Otherwise, I thought that the characters itself, like they were completely understandable in a lot of their motivations. I got pissed off at a lot of the characters as well, especially Rosaline, when she's given all of these opportunities to be able to tell Phil, hey, I have cancer. You're the last person in the family to find out that I have cancer. She's given so many opportunities to tell him that, and they just are miscommunicating, but it's miscommunicating in a way that like completely feels natural. If you've ever tried to have like difficult conversations with like family or people that you care about, like it's hard sometimes. You just don't, you want to avoid it, because I don't want to confront my parents dying. Like, of course you don't want to confront your own death, so you're not going to have that conversation with your family members. But it's an important thing to talk about. Evenings and weekends, I gave it like a 4-star rating, and that is because it suffers from epilogue-itis. Okay, I mentioned my hatred of epilogues before, but this one as well in particular. So like in the epilogue, we're skipping forward and we're seeing the wedding itself. And then we skip forward again and we see Rosaline after she's told her whole family about the diagnosis. We're seeing them go on this family trip to Ireland, where she's able to, show her kids around Ireland for the first time, her adult kids, showing them around Ireland. This is where I grew up. This is where so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is a trip down memory lane. And I just didn't care for it, okay? I think that the the story itself, it should have stayed as like almost a bottle episode, so to speak, where it does just stick to that one weekend of the heat wave, talking and like looking at how everyone's lives are interconnected during this heat wave. And they mention in the story about how the day feels like impossibly long, where you're able to just get so many different things done. And I think that that would have been so much better if the story just ended then, because I don't care about these two people's wedding. I feel like an epilogue itself, it kind of cheapens whatever story, an author provides us. Because if you had just cut it off at the end of the night, at the end of the weekend, kind of thing, you just see these characters, you're left with more to think about. I feel like with an epilogue, it's basically the author deciding what they're going to do with that story for you, rather than just giving you a sealed up envelope with a story inside of it. They're giving you a sealed envelope that already has a postage stamp on it, that already has a return address on it, that already has a destination address on it. And they're just sort of hammering into you the fact of what they want you to think about this story. Oh, this story thread, let me wrap it up in a bow. That's what the epilogue is. And I just don't like them. I think they're completely unnecessary. That's pretty much it for me. Those are the 8 books that I've read so far this year. I can't wait to keep reading more. I do have my TBR set for March. That's going to be it for today's video. I hope you liked it. Thank you for spending some time with me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye!